Good evening, everybody, and happy Monday. Welcome to another edition of 108 Pitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan, North Motor City Man. I'm pleased to be joined by Eric Katz and Trent Clark. How are you fellows tonight?
Doing well.
Doing awesome, Motor City Madmouth. Always good to be on 108 Stitches and talk some baseball.
Well, we have a busy agenda. Let's get right to it. We're going to turn it over to Eric. You wrote stories on Pete Alonzo. Where do you think this is going to end up? And do you think it could end up with him being perhaps in Pinstripes?
It won't be in New York. It won't be with the Yankees because the Yankees got Paul Goldschmidt and seem pretty content with that direction over there. Which I really think Paul Goldschmidt's going to be a placeholder for Ben Rice once he's because he's waiting in the wings to kind of take over. He's already gotten some action over there, so no, I don't see him moving to the Bronx at all. Matter of fact, the Yankees were uninterested. And yes, I have written very extensively about Pete Alonzo and how he badly overplayed his hand, thinking that he's a $200 million player, which would have paid him more than Matt Olson and also Freddie Freeman, who I think two are the best first basemen in baseball, not named Bryce Harper. Although people forget though that Harper wasn't originally a first baseman upon being signed. He was an outfielder. The Phillies moved him there because of all the injuries, and they wanted him to be healthy, which so far he's proven to be a pretty good first baseman. Here's the thing: Pete Alonzo and Scott Boras played this poorly. Now there were plenty of teams that needed first baseman, like the Yankees, like the Astros. I thought the Astros would have been perfect for him because it's the former Minute Maid Park is it's very friendly to the right-handed hitters with the Crawford boxes. Now they weren't balking at the price. They weren't biting at the price very much, and they balked at it, and they went out and decided to trade Kyle Tucker and got Isaac Paredes in return. And they also got in free agency. They went out and signed Christian Walker. So that took them out. Now, the Blue Jays are rumored to be kind of nibbling a little bit. The Angels, well, considering how erratic Artie Moreno runs that team, you never know what he's going to do. But Pete Alonso played this poorly. As a matter of fact, I don't feel bad for him at all because honestly, he only hit his offensive statistics have been declining each year, and he struck. Yes, he hit 30. He's a prolific power hitter, but he also has some pretty unspectacular strikeouts. And he only hit 34 home runs, which in most years is a good year for some, but it's less tolerable when you strike out 170 times. And his OPS is only 788. And these days, first basemen aren't being paid. This is gone into the days of Albert Pujols and Prince Fielder. You better be having like a 900 plus OPS if you want to be paid at that position. Pete Alonso only has a 788, which is, maybe average at best for an All-Star. The only reason he got to the All-Star game was he whined his way in because MLB wanted him to do the home run derby, and Pete Alonso wouldn't do it unless he got into the All-Star game, which really that last year that was Christian Walker's All-Star game to get into, not Pete Alonso's. But the fact of the matter is it was great watching Steve Cohen at Amazing Day show up Scott Boras and basically let the fans in on what was really going on. Of course, Scott Boras naturally fired back because, well, that's what he does. But it's also another example of Scott Boras is losing power. I can tell you this. Yes, he got some guys paid, but let's be honest. I think those guys kind of got themselves paid considering the season that they had. Heck, Mickey Mouse could have negotiated Juan Soto's contract. And he would have probably still gotten record-breaking money considering how a rare air of a slugger he is. The fact that he hits 40-plus home runs and also takes a lot of walks too, and strikes out and doesn't strike out nearly as much as most power hitters do is pretty impressive. But let's be honest, he overplayed his hand. Now he's begging the Mets to pay for his mistake, and Scott Boras is begging the Mets to bail him out. Now teams just aren't willing to do it. Gone are the days where you paid a guy for the past. Now people are looking at the future now. I mean, they no longer want to get burned by those kinds of contracts where the past was all great and stuff, but they don't want a situation where they're stuck with the guy in the roster and he becomes what Miguel Cabrera was at the end of his career. So, but yeah, Scott Boras and Pete Alonso played this poorly. I knew it was going to go poorly for him. But meanwhile, Pete Alonso too stubborn to move off his price. And it wouldn't shock me if it becomes a Michael Conforto situation where Pete Alonso is not signed and baseball season has begun, and he's sitting at home playing his Xbox, and Scott Boras and his henchmen are saying, "Don't worry, Pete, we got you, baby."
Okay, well, nobody's going to comment on this as our usual formation with Eric, the standalone topic. Welcome to the program, Mark. Glad to have you on.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. My computer was beyond lagging.
No problem. Glad you made it, just in a nick of time. All right, last Tuesday night, Ichiro Suzuki, CC Sabathia, Billy Wagner joined Dick Allen and Dave Parker in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Did the writers get it right with Suzuki, Sabathia, and Wagner? You know what? Since Mark Meraday and I met in person at the Baseball Hall of Fame, you'll get the opportunity to comment on this one first. Okay, Mark?
Oh, thank you, my friend. I actually think they did a nice job of putting in the people that they put in this year. All their numbers match up to what should be in the Hall of Fame. I've struggled lately with guys they're putting in there because I don't see a lot of guys going in lately because they deserve to be there. It's just because they kind of need to put somebody in there, in my opinion. But these guys, Ichiro, especially going Dave Parker and Dick Allen, those two guys were, what can you say about them? They were studs back in the day. And, Sabathia pitched well, whether he was in Minnesota or whether he went to the Yankees. He was solid for both teams. Going forward, I think the writers need to be a little bit more picky about who they're putting in. And if nobody really deserves it, like I'm looking at the list from this year and I'm kind of like, is anybody really jumping off the page at me that should be in the Hall of Fame? Or do they really do something that has the numbers and is qualified based on all the other people I've seen go in? But I do like the selections this year. I will say that I'm a lot happier with those guys than I was with Big Papi. I really wasn't a big fan of him getting in the Hall of Fame, but that's me. That's my opinion.
Okay, we'll turn over to Trent.
Yeah, a lot of big things we're talking about today, which is exciting, is I do think that we're starting to get it right. I think we're dumping some of the social issues and we're getting to the facts of the game. I think the Hall of Fame selection in the past has been a little strange, as far as who they've decided, who is, who isn't. It's a numbers game, and you've got to put up those numbers at that level, and that's the minimum requirement, right? And so if you don't do that, it's really hard for guys to say, oh, I deserve it. I really hustled a long way. I'm like, that's awesome. Everyone's going to remember you as a hustle player, but hey, if you don't have numbers, do you really deserve it? And so I like that. I think the news is getting it right. I think Cassie brings up two good points too in his diatribe, which is when you talk about these players, I think it's getting much more, what have you done for me lately? It always has been that, but contracts are going to be based on what your potential possibility are, not what you've done in the past. We had a horrible kind of experience with that with Mo Vaughn with the Los Angeles Angels back in the day. Here's a big first baseman sitting on a contract, and you're like, man, paying for what the guy had done. And, there was a lot of things that I didn't think were factored into that. It was an $80 million deal, which was massive back in the day. And one of the factors was great RBI guy, decent guy for power. Right field wasn't that friendly in Anaheim to a lot of players due to the winds and a couple different things there. And then also, from a defensive standpoint, we had two young guys with Troy Glaus and little David Eckstein on the left side, the right side of the infield, left side, I guess. And long throws, you want a really solid defenseman, and we didn't have it. And that had to be a factor in a contract because there's guys like Rafael Palmeiro, David Segui were all in free agency that year at a fraction of the cost with big output offensively and actually defensive adder instead of a subtractor. So, when these factors into it, I like the fact that baseball is getting wise. And one of the other things I think is a really big factor as we look at this Hall of Fame, I wonder how much as this thing gets, into the agent era, like who represented them, what kind of money they made. I wonder if this is going to play a role because Katsy's diatribe made me interested in the intimacy in Anaheim and the fact that, Boris has got a box right there at Anaheim. This is where he sees all the players. His office is only about 15 minutes, and he's a supporter because he's a box holder. But does that mean he's getting additional contracting with an Angels and getting big numbers for his players because of that relationship? I do wonder that, and hasn't played out well for the Angels for whatever reason. They're high quality players, but they may be on the backside of their career. And so all these things are becoming these big factors, and it's becoming a more holistic view of all of it. And it's great to see everybody taking all that into account.
Beautiful. All right, before we go to Eric's comments, can you put this one up? Eric Katz has really grown on me. He's a class act. Well, there you go, Eric. You're building your following. Great stuff. Hello, Ralph. Good to have you on. Love the info. Dave Erickson, we enjoy the participation. All right, Eric, with that said, you know what we're talking about? Go ahead.
Well, to follow up on Trent's point, I think right now with Scott Boras and the Angels are plenty pissed at him right now because of the Anthony Rendon disaster right now. So I think right now the Angels are putting Scott Boras in timeout in terms of destinations where his free agents can go. And it also should be noted he's got seats all over California. Both, he more than likely will have him in Sacramento. I know he had him in Oakland. He has him in San Francisco, and obviously, he has him in L.A., even though L.A. tries not to deal with him, although they did this year with Blake Snell after years of not and letting the other guys go and letting guys like Corey Seager and Trey Turner go to sign big deals elsewhere. Now, as far as the Hall of Fame goes, I think they got it right. I thought Ichiro should have been unanimous. I mean, he's probably the best all-around player. I'd rank Ichiro above Ohtani in terms of greatest Japanese players of all time, because the fact that Ichiro could, wasn't a power hitter in his career, but he could do it all. He could hit, he could run, he was just an outstanding outfielder. His first year in the league when Japanese players were really starting to come over. We had a little bit come over, but not like none of them made it. But none of them made the impact that Ichiro did, where Ichiro busted George Sisler's hits record, which was many years old at that time, and no one was even thinking about it. Which I think he had 262 hits that year, where it's like you couldn't even pitch to the guy because everywhere you threw it, it end up out of the infield. CC Sabathia, I'm happy he's going in as a Yankee because helped them win the World Series. That guy was unbelievable. Funny thing was every time I was at a game, it always seemed like he was pitching, whether it be in Chicago or my first Yankee game in New York, he was pitching. But obviously that's very well deserving of it. And the fact that the unique part about his career was when he lost the heat, because he always thrown heat. When he lost his heat, he switched. He was able to reinvent himself into a control pitcher, which is not something a lot of guys can do. But he excelled at it for a few years there before his arm finally gave out. And then Billy Wagner, that was overdue. I think. At one point he was only behind Lee Smith, Mariano Rivera, and Trevor Hoffman for saves. Obviously, guys now have passed him up, like France, just because they played. But at one point he was only behind those guys, and he was good everywhere he went, particularly in Houston. He was a big part of their first World Series run. But, I'd say they got it right. I think that, I'm glad the Baseball Hall of Fame is starting to get back to what it is, which is the best player of your era. I'm not sure if Billy Wagner kind of has it unfair because he had Hoffman and Rivera at that point in time, and that's you just can't compete with that. But now I think we're getting back to best of their era. Ichiro was best of his era. I think Sabathia, you could probably say the same thing as well, despite Justin Verlander. Although Justin Verlander didn't really get good until later, until he got to Houston, which he was kind of so in Detroit, kind of up down there. But I'd say it's a great vote. I think I think we're finally getting back to it, which I'm glad we're not electing guys on peak years, which otherwise that's the problem I have with Andrew Jones is he had a peak with the Braves for a long time, but then after leaving the Braves, he fell right off. So, but my argument there is, well, if you're going to elect the guys on peak years, you better include Don Mattingly, which I've been making that argument for a while, because he had an insane peak where he was the best player in baseball for as the best player of the 80s, so being the best for 10 years. But then when the back gave out later, he obviously he wasn't the best, but still he had that insane peak where he also broke the Grand Slam record. I think he had 6 in a year and then didn't hit a Grand Slam afterward. But you can't be electing guys if you're going to stick to we're not just going to elect guys on peak years. Then why would I want Andrew Jones in the Hall of Fame?
Well, number one, he had 66%, so it's inevitable. We won't talk about next year's class. We have other things we want to talk about. Here's my take. Sabathia gets in with 251 wins. 250 wins, I think, will be the new 300 going forward, period. Number two, you have Billy Wagner getting in on 10th try. At least he doesn't have to wait any longer. Nobody else has to decide his fate. As far as Ichiro Suzuki, a massive 3,000th hit with the Miami Marlins of all teams. He doesn't get it in Miami. It's hard to believe, but that's a little trivia question for those individuals that want to know about it. So, and of course, let's not forget that Ichiro's numbers, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show, so hang tight. There's another nugget I want to throw, but we have other things I want to get to. So when you look at this class, and let's not lose sight of the fact that Dick Allen and Dave Parker were excellent players as well, even though these guys were elected. Overall, the baseball writers definitely got it right. There's no question. There isn't anything in next year's class that convinces me that Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones won't get in with the way the numbers are currently set. But I want to talk about tonight. We'll leave it exactly where it's at. One more topic, station break time. White Sox unveil a statue of Mark Burley at Wright Field July 11th. Okay, Trent, you can lead off on this one.
Mark Burley's statue?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by this. I mean, I think their 2005 championship. Mark's had some fabulous years in Chicago, incredible pitcher. I thought statues were kind of reserved for icons. I mean, I think Mark Burley was a great player. I never saw him as iconic in Chicago in that way. Maybe I'm misinformed on his stats, but Mark was a heck of a competitor, absolutely consistent on multiple years over there, and a huge part of that 2005 run. These guys were never a dominant powerhouse. This was their one championship. In Chicago, the other guy who's got a nice little statue over by that basketball stadium did win 6 championships over there, right? That Michael Jordan guy's pretty good, right? So I think that, when I think statues, I love Pittsburgh. A player like Roberto Clemente, maybe not known for his championship, but a humanitarian award winner every year until Major League Baseball actually named the humanitarian award after the man because he was so important to the game. So, I when I think of iconic statues reserved for that, and that is not a knock at all on Mark Burley, who sounds like a fabulous human being and a really high quality pitcher in this league. I was a little surprised that he's getting a statue.
I like your Roberto Clemente reference, which means now I'm going to talk to M Square. Okay. M Square, we all know what that means. Well, I need to get you to comment on Roberto Clemente. Come on, we got to let him do it. But then you're going to Mark Burley. Okay, Mark.
Well, Clemente, Honus Wagner, Willie Stargell, 3 guys that have statues in Pittsburgh, and 3 iconic guys. Is Mark Burley really an iconic guy? Like, you got to ask yourself that same question. It was kind of like going back to the previous question when we talked about the Hall of Fame. We're putting people in there who I don't look at as iconic, legendary players. And for each city, I guess, you do what you got to do that makes it honorable for those players. But, no, I don't see it from that perspective. I see a guy who is synonymous with baseball in that city. And if that guy's not synonymous with baseball in that city, I don't think he deserves a statue. And I certainly don't think he deserves a plaque in the Hall of Fame. That's my
Hey, Barbara, I got to ask you a question on this because, a couple things going on, right? We have iconic players in Pittsburgh. You mentioned those three statues there, which are iconic names. And a lover of baseball, a 10-year-old boy who has a father who loves the game, and he is from Pittsburgh, will pass along those names every single day, right? I think that's right. So two things I'd like you to comment on is one is Dave Parker's hitting the Hall of Fame, maybe one of the best known guys as one of the best men in baseball, besides being a great player. Want to hear your thoughts on that as a Pittsburgh guy. And then your point is Burley. Is he synonymous in Chicago with baseball? Do you see that?
First of all, I don't see that with Burley.
Yeah,
I really don't. Like, when I heard that, I was kind of like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Is this something that is significant? Is this something that 25 years from now, some kid's going to look at this and go, yeah, that dude should be there? Like that's where you got to be with it. Is this a guy who's that significant that my parents have taught me about this person? I'm a sports fan. My parents are sports fans. I've grown up on the sport. Are my parents going to teach me about this person? Are they going to talk about this person? I don't see that with Burley. And I'll just leave it right there. And I'm okay with somebody having a different opinion on it, but that's how I see it. Because on the other side of that coin, the only reason Parker didn't get himself a plaque in the Hall of Fame much earlier is because he was part of that cocaine scandal in Pittsburgh. Because if you go back and you look at his numbers and you look at the player he truly was a Hall of Fame level player. But, there was so much going on during that period of time when he was there, and it was not hidden, not in the least bit. And I think a lot of the sports writers and people like that were kind of like frowning upon him, which I understand, but they frowned upon that. And that's what took him so long to get in the Hall of Fame. From my perspective, I don't think there's another guy on those teams other than Stargell and Parker. And I'm talking about, let's say, the 79 team that quite feasibly, maybe Bill Madlock, that should make the Hall of Fame, So
I mean, Motor City. I mean, that's a great point when he talks about Dave Parker. He's that notorious issue of the cocaine deal. He's a big fish in a very small pond. This is a little big town, right? Pittsburgh is not a gigantic town. And yeah, Kathy, I want you to weigh in on this too, because how many deals, like, when New York was going on, Strawberry, yeah, he's got coke issues. That was yesterday's news before tomorrow came, and like, it's New York. There's 450 other headline stories that are going in. And in Pittsburgh, this is a little big town, man. This is going to stay with folks for a while. And in the big news areas of LA and New York, man, that's just a rotation of the news, and it goes quick.
If I might add one last thing, Pittsburgh is one of the original cities of baseball. Like, you go way back. I mean, the 1800s, when baseball was originated at the end of the 1800s. Pittsburgh is one of the original cities. Like, Phyllis, this is what makes it so difficult for Pirate fans to swallow the pill we're swallowing the last 30 plus years with such poor output. And, Bob, you know what, Eric, I was at their Pirate Fest. I took my son. It was free. So that was the key ingredient. But there were only, there were 20,000 people that went through in 2 days. It was free. They gave shit away. And, I mean, 20,000 people, that doesn't even fill up half the stadium for a game. Like that should tell you something in and of itself. I think it's really sad that Major League Baseball turns a blind eye to the way things are running with teams like Pittsburgh after all these years. And
well, they're not the only team being run that way. The Marlins have been that way since birth, practically, aside from the World Series runs.
Yeah. And why do you want to have a team be part of your league per se if you're not going to have some sort of success consistently?
Well, at least you can say they've had success, because there's plenty of teams in this league who have been garbage for years, like the Colorado Rockies, for example, who all they have is a surprise World Series appearance in 2007, never won a division, and have only gone to the playoff once in a blue moon. So I suggest we all be happy for the rings we've won.
Exactly. All right, so let me keep things on track. Number one, the Pirates have won 5 World Series, period.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've disappeared the last few decades. I get that. In terms of you trying to ask me about Parker, his reputation made him wait this long, where nobody's questioning the significance of what his playing is. And when you start getting in scandals, the baseball writers don't like it. We won't get into detail. We can do another show on that. So with that said, you can comment on that, Eric, but I want you to say,
well, y'all are
with Burley.
Well, with Clemente though, y'all are wrong, because he was I believe he was the World Series MVP in 1971, where he was batting 400 in the postseason, and everybody knows just how strong of an arm he had. He would be hosing guys out regularly, and nobody would ever try and take the base on him, because he played the wall so well, both at Forbes and then later on at Three River, what would eventually be called Three River Stadium. But aside from that, though,
Eric, hold me interrupt. Where am I wrong on this? All I talked about the fact that they won 5 world championships.
Absolutely,
now,
you're not wrong.
Well, I'm not wrong. I don't know where you went with this. I'm still trying to find out. Really? Seriously? Those people waiting for those words tonight. I love Clemente.
As far as Burley goes, he's got the no hitter, he's got the perfect game. Not a lot of people in baseball could say, pitchers in baseball can say they've done that. Growing up in the Chicago area, obviously I grew up with Burley and saw that career from start to finish. I don't think he's really that iconic per se. He was a big part of that World Series run. So was Aaron Rowan, for that matter. And I think, I just think that the White Sox are doing it because they want to distract from the trash that's going to be on their field again next season.
Interesting. So the only comment I have on this is that, number one, if the Chicago White Sox feel he's worth a statue, that's the only thing that matters.
It's a pub stunt. Let's be honest. It's a pub stunt.
All right. Well, whatever. I'm just making a point, Eric. Okay. If they feel he's worthy of a statue, more power to him. You won a World Series. Well, let me finish, Eric. Okay. You had a chance to talk. Let me please get my opinion in. All right. Number one, he's not getting in the Baseball Hall of Fame. We know that. His numbers are never going to get him there. Will he get in the White Sox Hall of Fame? If he isn't already? Sure. Got a statue? Sure. So if the White Sox think he's worthy of a statue, more power to him. Am I going to debate the fact that they're definitely going to have a very indigent product out there? Well, that doesn't take a rocket scientist out there to figure out. So highlighter Man Sports says what's going on or what's on. There you go. So put it up there. That's too many letters. I'm not looking for an eye test later, even though majority of the panel has them. So good to have you on, my friend. All right, with that said, we're going to go to a station break. Candy Evelyn, take care of it for us, please.
South Florida Tribune YouTube station. If you see that red subscribe button, hit it, like us, share us. Share us with all your friends and family. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday and Thursday nights, you just never know what we're going to be talking about, so tune in to find out. The South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google and Apple Books. Talks about Scott's 40-plus years in the industry and how the media has changed over that time. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to sponsor a show or advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or have show ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to the show.
Thank you very much. Pencilman and highlighter of men's sport chiming in to put those bad boys up. Yes, we know Candy does a good job with those. There you go, fellas. They're up there. Adam Jones returns to the Orioles as an ambassador and a special advisor. Eric, do you like the move?
I do. I mean, he's been frequently seen in the little water stand they have out in right field. So, I'm kind of glad he's back because I always thought he was a good player. I thought Baltimore let go. I thought he should have had another shot in baseball after Baltimore let him go because I thought he still had a little bit of gas left in the tank. But glad to see him back. He was a big part of the Orioles for a while.
Pencilman Sports. I hate baseball, but come on the show to support the show and panel. Much appreciated. We really, really appreciate it big time. Okay, Trent.
Yeah, I think it's great for Baltimore. He was a big fan favorite there. I mean, this guy also has got drafted by the Mariners and then had some stint in Japan. I think I like that about him. Then when he kind of found his groove in a space in Baltimore, I think those experiences of some different things of him growing up in San Diego kid. Kind of seeing the corners of the country, seeing all the league up and down from a couple different teams, and then he's got the Japan experience too. I mean, that tells me he's going to bring something to Baltimore, and that community is, endearing to him. And he's still a young guy, man, 39 years old. Like, it's great. I think it's a great move for Baltimore.
Very good. Okay, let's go out there and go back to the comments. Pretty upbeat, positive. So long as they're that way, we'll keep posting them. Pencilman Sports. I'm excited to cover the Winter Class at Lone Depot Park in person. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a pretty good time for you out there. Keep it going. Okay, fresh jacket, Eric Cass. Look at this guy. He's not paying attention. Your dress code's getting better. Eric Cass is the old school wired headphone. Nothing wrong with that. As long as he keeps the background noise, it's all good. So who's next, Mark?
Yeah, they like to come after you, cats. I don't know. I got your back, though, dog. I got your back. Hey, at the end of the day, for all these teams and all these players, you gotta just put yourself in the right situation to make it work for you. And I think Adam Jones was a great player in Baltimore. I live out in the area. He was beloved out here, and. Now they've got Cedric Benson? Is that what it is? Am I right? Eric, am I right?
No.
Cedric
Mullins.
Cedric Mullins. I don't know why I'm saying Benson, but he's beloved now, even though they've talked about moving on from him because they have so much talent. But the people in Baltimore are starving for a championship there again in baseball. And Jones just brings back that aura of what they started with to start build towards it. I believe he was on not last year's, but the previous playoff team that they had.
Yeah, Bucks team.
Yeah. And they love him here still. So that was a great move by the organization, in my opinion.
I'll say this much. I love the move. Nothing wrong with a guy like him who's an Oriole ever since of the word. But the biggest thing here is I love it when teams bring back star players to be a part of their organization some way or another. I'll give you two examples. Al Kaline and Willie Horton with the Tigers forever. What else more do I have to say? Period. We'll move on. One more subject, and then Mark Maraday is going to end it with his topic. Ichiro wants to have a drink with the writer that didn't vote him in on the ballot. We talked about Ichiro before. I like the smile that Trent Clark has on it. So with that said, your smile led you to the first opportunity comment on this. Go ahead, Trent.
I wish I didn't vote for, Ichiro, because I'd like to have a drink with him, man. Like, this would be great. Like, Ichiro's a guy, man. He was an icon, man. I was in the league when he came in the league, and immediate, just wow. I mean, just a wow factor to watch the guy play. Of course, if you look at the world of high-level collegiate softball right now, they all run the Ichiro. This is how they hit. They literally are running out of the box. It's an amazing amount of skill and timing that he has. In addition to this, once in a while he just show you some pop and 400 feet and hit a home run. But guy runs like a deer and throws lasers all over the place, and the guy must be 161 pounds. I mean, he proved the fact that you don't need to be the biggest guy, you don't need to be everything, but he is a 5-tool guy, and I think that's his argument with the writer. Like, hey man, what tools were you thinking I might be missing, bro? What do you got for me, man? Because I don't know how this writer thought this was a bad idea. He must have had some sushi food poisoning up in Seattle one time and just had a bad night and said, forget it. I won't vote for anything in the Ichiroville or Seattle. In fact, at one point, you could literally change the name to Ichiroville instead of Seattle. They were pretty gaga about this guy, and he was that kind of a special place. Actually, that icon might get a statue right there. That icon would be a well-deserving statue in Seattle that I feel really good about. But yeah, I wish I was that writer getting that drink.
All right, Mark, you know what we're going to do? Pacify the guys in the chat room. You're going to talk a little hockey, then you're going to address this topic, okay? And just so you know, Mark Miraday will be appearing from time to time on the Sports Exchange when we talk hockey as well. So let's start from the beginning of the hockey comments. Mark, is Crosby getting traded?
He's not. In fact, I just was reading about it today. Somebody inside that locker room who writes for the Penguins, Dan Kanjurski, he does a great job, by the way. Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Crosby's not going anywhere, guys. He's just not. He just signed a new contract with Pittsburgh. He's made it very clear that he understands where the organization is, where they're headed, and he has been committed to that organization since he was a kid. And he's not going anywhere. I'll tell you what, it would absolutely shock the living daylights out of me if he ever left Pittsburgh. Just like Lemieux, that kid's there for the duration. Lemieux basically raised him as his protege, and it's not going to happen. It really isn't. I know people think Colorado. I've heard recently Toronto, Montreal. Sid has no intention, no matter what's going on with that team, to move on. In fact, I would not be surprised if all these guys played out their contracts in the next few years, and Chris Letang and Gino Malkin, the whole shebang. And Sid was still there to guide the young guys along that are coming in. I mean, he's just that guy. He really is. I was talking about him tonight with I have a whole new thing going on in my life. I'm going back to coaching high school football. And I was just talking about him tonight, how, he refuses to get married and have children because he's so dedicated to the sport. He's been since he was a little kid. And even though he's still with the same woman that he's been with for years, his passion, love, and dedication goes to his sport. And as crazy as that sounds, that's where he is.
So anybody that thinks he's going to the Florida Panthers, don't hold your breath. Now, back on the point. Okay, Ichiro. It's okay. It was pretty interesting. I like that we're going to bring a guy on the hockey show. We'll give him dibs on this topic tonight. No big deal. We're doing really well on time, so we're certainly fine putting him in there. So it's okay. Now, your thoughts about Ichiro. 1 vote short. 97%. 97.1, I believe. Yeah, it's yours. But I love Trent's perspective.
Okay. Hey, I just want to say thanks for calling Sid out as a class act. Can I tell a quick story about Sidney Crosby, guys?
Yeah, but make sure you get back to Ichiro. Okay.
Yeah, and I promise I will. My son was 8 turning 9, and my son is a hockey player. He absolutely, I've raised him correctly on Pittsburgh hockey. So anyway, I took him up to a game, and the next day we went to practice. And Sid comes out and he signs a lot for people. So he comes out, and my son had a sign that said, all I want for my 9th birthday is a picture with Sidney Crosby. So the guy who kind of walks beside him as he's in his vehicle driving along signing takes his sign, Sid signs it, and he hands it back to us. And my son looks at me like, Dad, what the hell? And I said, come on, let's go down here. So we went down about 15 people. Sid pulls back up, and I look at him. I said, hey, Sid. I said, it's his 9th birthday. You signed a sign. He really appreciates it. He just wants a picture with you. And he says, yeah, send him out. So my son starts walking out, and the guy comes down there. Hey, you can't do that. Sid says, hey, it's the kid's 9th birthday. He just wants a picture with me. Let him go. And at the end of the day, we came to find out that while he was doing all this, his parents were waiting for him down at a restaurant, which is not even a half mile down the road. But he stopped for a half hour to sign for these people. So just a class act in professional sports. As a person, as a human being, you gotta give him his props for that. I love Ichiro, by the way. We went to see him play in Baltimore a couple times. Just another consummate professional. One thing, guys, how old was he when he came to America? Like I look at him, he looked.
Well, he wasn't young. He wasn't young because he had to do his time in Japan. I think he was 25 or 26, right?
Yeah, I looked at him, and I'm like, dudes, this isn't like a 21-year-old kid, And he just, his whole routine pregame, his whole professional demeanor was just all about being a baseball player and understanding and appreciate everything about what he had in front of him. And it just made you love him as a professional athlete, as a professional baseball player, because we've gotten away from that down the road here. We really have. And I really, and I said to my son, who was younger at the time, obviously, I said, that's the kind of guy that you should hang your hat on as far as somebody you looked up to as a pro athlete. And he really did. In fact, he pulled an autographed Ichiro card, and he's like, Dad, oh my God, I can't believe I pulled this. This is, like he was thrilled to death. But like it thrills me to death a guy like that gets in, because he not only deserves it, but he loves the sport. It's not just about the money that he put in his pocket from it. He literally put his heart and soul into it as a player and a player for the fans. That's how I feel about it.
Back to the chat room real quick, and I'll let you go ahead, Trent. I love the positivity in the chat room, so I'm going to acknowledge that. I feel it's important to let these guys know they're appreciated. So, Mark, this is really a compliment to you in terms of, sure, it would be nice to see Crosby in the playoffs again. Everybody gets that. The NHL and the TV partners want it more than you do, because they know to help with their ratings that they can get. So, yeah, Mark, they're calling you a class act. Good stuff. Thanks for the side chat, Scott. My pleasure. As long as it's good nature, I can deviate a little bit, as long as it doesn't throw us off. And tonight, your comments have done anything but throw us off. I'd have to pencil, and the guys have really turned it around in the chat room this year without a doubt. Glad to know. All right, Trent, go ahead. And then Eric, and then I'll even get a few words in. We're going to close out the show, though, with it the way we started it. Mark Maraday is going to talk about his topic. He knows what it is. And then Candy will issue a final station break to go along with everybody else.
Yeah, my two things, final 2 cents on Ichiro before we turn it over to Kathy is, right. I love this stance with the samurai sword, to back to his heritage, like kind of getting lined up, ready to go. I think Marley touched on a point that was so important, that there's special icons in sports that us as fans, we go, hey, that guy's worth the price of admission. And Ichiro was one of those guys. Mark's talking about being in Baltimore, telling his children, watch him in warm-ups. And then the game starts, and he does something amazing, whether it's a base running move, a swinging, running hit that's a high chopper to the second baseman that he beats out, or a hit into the gap that's a stand-up triple, or a put-out at home plate thrown from the warning track because of that guy's arm. I mean, every night it's like a move out of this guy, and he's worth the price of admission, man. And he drew fans on the road and obviously at home. I mean, Seattle was their golden age when he was there. But I think that is a sign of an iconic player when you have that kind of support and where you have people lining up to buy a ticket going, they're playing the Mariners without Ichiro, and they're coming just for that guy. That's something special. So let me turn it over to Kathy.
I mean, Ichiro was playing a different game than everyone else. I mean, he was playing his own game. I mean, whether he was, again, the best Japanese baseball player of all time, and it will always be that way regardless of what Ohtani does. I think that he always played the game the right way. I mean, he could play defense where he either hose the guy out at second or third, or make an insane robbery at the track where he robs a home run, or just hitting the ball and stealing a base. This guy was just a great all around player. I mean, and obviously you want it to be unanimous. Obviously the jerk's not going to show himself, but obviously he got in. I mean, he's obviously very well deserving of it. He's very well deserving of it, and he has no doubt deserves to be immortalized with the greats of the game.
Well, let's put it this way. The guy gets 3,200 hits in MLB. How many 200 hit seasons he had? Too many to count. We're not digging it up. Let's Katie decides to do it. Okay, well, you never know. She might. And gets like 4,300 some hits when you combine the two. Really? Seriously? This is unbelievable. Should have gotten 100%. Mariano Rivera did, but you know what? 99.7 isn't so bad. We all know we're a worldwide treasure that he is. But the biggest thing about Ichiro, he endorsed small ball and stolen bases. Yep. And he stole bases when the bases were smaller than they currently are now. So this guy can do everything. Eric, Kathy, I love that Kathy description, Trent. Good stuff. The reality of the situation is, the guy's a heck of a defensive player, he's a student of the game. It'd be pretty hard to debate against 99.7% of the vote. Who knows what will happen should Ohtani ever get to the Hall of Fame? I don't know. I'll be alive to see it anyway. But still, whether Ohtani gets that 100% of the vote, I'm not holding my breath. I'll be alive to see it. But 99.7 isn't so bad either. He deserved it. And he had a dynamite career. More power to him. So that's it. So guess what, Mr. Marinade? We saved your topic for last. So the floor is yours. And I'm going to let people know what the topic is unless somebody else wants to chime in before I turn over to Mark.
Are we talking Dodger baseball?
Oh, let me finish. Please. All right. The Dodgers are turning over $1 billion and how it's hurting the league. That's what we're talking about. That's what you texted me. And guess what, Mr. Barber? The floor is all of yours. Nobody will be commenting on the topic. What I try to do with a lot of my panelists is I give them the opportunity. If you send me a text, and it's all yours. And if I decide to bring it up at a later date, everybody gets to talk about it except the one that brought it up because we give it the floor to himself. That case, I'm turning it over to you, Barber.
So I know Scott, I know I'm a day late and $1 short on this because it was last week and we didn't end up having a show, but God dang it, they're ruining baseball, in my opinion. Deferring $1 billion, it's actually more than that, but deferring over $1 billion to players is insane to me. It is absolutely, positively insane. And you know something? I just realized recently, I've been reading a lot about this, and I realized recently that this is going to come back and hopefully bite them in the ass, because in 2027, when that collective bargaining agreement's up, there has got to be some crack in the armor here. Somebody has got to step forward and say, no, we can't do this anymore. Dodgers, you're screwed. And all these teams have been playing fair ball for years and years. We got to go down that road. I don't even get mad at the Yankees. I'm not mad at the Mets. You're talking over $1 billion in money. How do most of these teams even compete with that? Nobody has those kind of TV contracts they can do that with. Nobody has an owner that can do that with, other than, the Dodgers, maybe the Yankees because of their TV contract, or maybe Chicago, places like that. It's absolutely disgusted me, and it's hard for me to throw my weight behind baseball at this point, although I love being on here with you guys. But it's really difficult for me to throw my weight behind baseball when I feel like it's been being manipulated by the Dodgers as they continue to do this. And why people don't see that perspective of it, anybody outside of Dodgers fans, I don't know. I don't know how you couldn't see that perspective. And part of that's probably because I'm an old ass guy at this point, but I just don't think it's a fair playing field.
Fair enough. You know what? You gave me an idea, Meriday, and here it is. Candy and Eric did a nice job with Bob Uecker on Fire Up Wisconsin last Monday. We wanted to give them the entire opportunity to talk about them, and I'm glad they stepped up. So as far as I'm concerned, this topic is fair game for us. Eric, you don't have to give me a book and a story on them, because you certainly had 45 minutes, an hour last week. So, but you can still chime in anyways. What are your thoughts about the legacy of Bob Uecker?
I mean, he's the last of his kind. I mean, I really think that breed of broadcaster is dying, where you don't really have a voice of a team anymore, just because there's multiple TV networks, national deals, blah, 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 blah. Because, the voice, there's now many broadcasters of a team. I mean, obviously you have a few exceptions like Tom Hamilton in Cleveland, Michael Kay in New York, Howie Roseman with the Mets, but that breed of broadcaster is slowly dying. And Bob Uecker managed to stand the test of time, and he managed to he broadcasted it during times when the Brewers just had some awful teams, and they had some years where they just, for 20 plus years, they weren't in the playoffs. But Bob Uecker was what everybody looks forward to hearing, because he made it fun, regardless of how good or bad the Brewers were. People still tuned in to see Bob Uecker, because the baseball team's a monopoly at that point. But Bob Uecker is what made it fun. I mean, I don't think you can find another broadcaster who's multi-talented, both as an actor, a comedian, Saturday Night Live, among other things, than just baseball.
I'll give you that. All right, Trent.
Well, listen, man. I mean, the Uke, come on, like, he's one of the most loved guys in all of baseball. In fact, I've never met a person who said, "Man, Bob Uecker, what a jerk," right? Said nobody ever, right? And here's a guy who had a lot of exposure. I think people really were always surprised by Bob Uecker's comedic timing. I mean, he was incredible. They didn't expect it from a baseball guy. And of course, totally self-deprecating, right? I mean, he's the Rodney Dangerfield of baseball, kind of on his own stuff. I was really impressed to see a good friend, Scott Spezio, posted a really neat picture of Bob holding Scott as the little boy as he's at the ballpark with his dad over the St. Louis Cardinals. And Uecker's, just got that big grin on his face, man. I mean, just a guy that was never unhappy to be exactly where he was. I mean, this guy was fully present at the ballpark, and the smile on his face, like, this is the best place to be, and I don't want to be anywhere else in the world, was his vibe, and it was evident to everybody around him. And that genuine, authentic joy for the game and for the love of it was so infectious that you just don't find guys like that anymore. And Cassie makes a point. Will there be another one? I'm going to disagree with Cassie on this one. That I think there will be. I think there'll be other people like that. Uke's a 1 in a million. But listen, there's a lot of players that come to the league. There'll be another icon like that shines out, that has that same, vigor, that same. It'll be different. It'll be the comedy. Maybe it'll be the humanitarianism. Maybe it'll be, the gleam in his eye. I don't know, but I think there'll be another one. But man, Bob Uecker and his legacy in baseball is entirely cemented. And on the barber, pretty soon it's not going to be Dodger blue anymore. It's going to be Dodger gold, because this is all they got. Apparently, players made of gold, and they must have a little key to Fort Knox or something on them. And I would argue one on that is that, like, hey, this has been done before. The Yankees, the Yes Network, they all came and separated themselves. Were paying way more than everybody else in the league. Somehow they didn't totally separate themselves during that time. And there was still some parity in the league. And I'm saying that by championships at that time. So I don't know how it'll shake out. Baseball players still got to go out and play, but it does feel like the field's a little imbalanced.
Yeah. All right, Eric.
I gotta say though, I mean, as pissed off as we are about the Dodgers, which rightfully so, which I think they're ultimately going to screw a lot of people in 2027. Because the lockout's not just going to be your typical owners versus players; it's going to be owners versus players, and obviously vice versa. But no, with that though, remember the players ultimately have the final say on what happens on the field. They are the ones who ultimately go out there every night and play. So the Dodgers can easily. We've seen the Dodgers spend a lot before and ultimately get bounced out of the playoffs, which to much to the world's joy. But remember, I mean, as bad as it is now, though, the players ultimately have the final say on what happens. And just so you know, that defense over there is looking a little leaky. Have you ever wondered why they're going after swinging and miss pitchers right now? Think about it.
Well, now everybody providing an opinion on this thing. I'll do it too. All I'll say about the Dodgers is Dave Roberts has job security. Period.
Well,
he does. He
a little
won a
bit.
World Series. Well, wait a minute, Eric. You said your piece, and Merde had his deal, and so did Trent. But I say Dave Roberts had job security. All right, Mark, let's talk about Euchre. I have some thoughts on it as well. Did you already do it?
No, I didn't talk about Euchre. I thought that Bob
you
Euchre. Listen, any guy that can get on national TV and capture the whole country, and anybody who's a baseball fan can capture their heart by just being the comedic presence he was. Like, he was an average baseball player, right? This wasn't a guy who was a superstar with the personality. This is just an average baseball player out there who went out and made the most of his opportunity after baseball. And I agree with you guys. Everybody loved Bob Euchre. Like, I was when that came across my ticker, I was like, oh man, what the hell? Bob Euchre died? Yeah. Like, it kind of saddened me. Some people I look at like they're going to live forever, and I know they're not. But, he was one of those guys who really made baseball. Like, he made baseball. When he was part of an announcing team, whether he was doing a commercial to represent baseball, everybody had a connection to baseball when it came to Bob Euchre. And, we can only hope, Trent, that somebody else comes along that makes you feel like that guy did. But as the years go on, I think money plays more of an important factor than it does keeping the I don't know, I guess let's say the vibe of baseball alive in people. We've got so many people from so many different countries. Half of them can't even speak English that are playing professional baseball today. No offense to them, but, we're going to miss that down the road, I think. And that was a real legend we lost when we lost Bob Euchre.
The only thing I'll chime in on this, guy had great light beer commercials. That there was anybody close to it.
Yeah.
And the
iconic.
Yeah.
They were,
undoubtedly.
They were.
Motor City, when you say he missed the tag, everyone knows exactly what commercial you're talking about. And it was like a 1980s, maybe 70s commercial, right? Hey, he missed the tag. Great seats, everybody. Like, exactly what commercial that was. And the freaking thing is now 50 years old.
Well, they did put out a book on it. I have it somewhere. I have a box of books. I don't know where a lot of them are, but called Light Reading. If you can dig it up anywhere, those are classic. But Light Reading was really good book. I met him. Home Depot Park, talked about 5 minutes, no complaints. But for me personally, Ernie Harwell will always be the best. He wasn't just an ordinary announcer. We were close. We were family. Anytime I needed some advice, Ernie was there. I had his phone number. Call him anytime you want. I don't think I ever texted him, or I don't remember if I knew how to text back in the day when we talked. But Ernie was great, And Ernie Harwell was my favorite. Who knows? Maybe down the road, Joe Davis will be the favorite. of the Dodgers. He's up and coming into the Ford Frick Award. So I might as well mention Euchre since we didn't have a show last week, but I felt everybody on this crew deserved that opportunity to do it. No reason why we can't do it. Eric, I have to compliment you and Candy. You did a wonderful job with that tribute to Bob Euchre. If you haven't seen it before, go to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, then look for the tribute to Bob Euchre. Candy Ebling and Eric Gatt did a good job. It is on Under Fire Up Wisconsin. And what were you going to say, Eric? And then we're going to wrap it up.
I was fortunate enough to be able to sign the banner. That's going to be whatever they're doing with it. I don't really know yet, but I was fortunate enough to be at the ballpark to do that, as well as leave something at the Bob Euchre statue that's just outside of what's now American Family Field, and be able to leave a baseball there for him. And it was surrounded by all sorts of Brewers garb and Miller Lite bottles of the sort. It was pretty great to see.
Mark, quick question. Did you have a chance to go in the Baseball Hall of Fame and check out the Ford Frick Award in the museum?
Yeah, I checked out everything. Like I went from top to bottom. The whole thing is just like, if you've never been to the Baseball Hall of Fame, it will bring you chills to walk through those doors, to be quite honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
There's two places I've been that I felt that way about: the Sistine Chapel and the Baseball Hall of Fame. How they compare? It's totally different. But, you know, I grew up on baseball. I played baseball all my life. I love baseball. I don't love where it is today, but I love baseball as a sport. And I mean, like, I absorbed every possible thing for as long as I could while I was in there, whether my family walked with me or not.
Yeah, you know, Field of Dreams out in Iowa is something people have to get out to see. I told Candy, once we do the Field of Dreams, you are going to Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame. We didn't actually get there till that Monday. We actually toured Cooperstown, and what a beautiful area. Couldn't get enough of that cider, that's for sure. Apple cider. Oh, it was unbelievable. So with that said, it does wrap up this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, but we're not done yet. With that said, Candy's going to give us one more station break. And you know what, Candy, when you're doing it, come on screen, Candy. You can give us your 2 cents about Bob Euchre. Candy can make an appearance anytime she feels right to do it. Otherwise, I'll have to do the promos myself. But you know what we're going to do first? We're going to go out there and have Eric Katz let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
You can follow me on my Twitter, which is at Sports Team News, or you can read my blog at bellyupsports.com, where I write all things baseball. And yes, you can find all that I've written about Pete Alonzo. And if you think I'm against your team, I am.
Yeah, that was I can't stop that. Okay, Trent.
Catsy owes me something because his Yankees went down. That's all I know. I picked the Dodgers. He didn't. And this whole thing turned around on the big spend that the Yankees always had to spend on everybody. And then they found themselves on the other end of it with a Dodger spend, and they ended up number 2. I want my due in the sun. One day, Catsy, I want my day in the sun. You can find me at trend@leadershipity.com. My book is Leading Winning Teams. Also, my podcast is Winners Find a Way. Top 2%, over 100,000 downloads a month. You need to come check it out. We talk everything about winning as I interview the top 1% in the world who have done something in their lives and how they got there. So check it out. You can email me anytime, trend@leadershipity.com.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Right, I'm waiting for that phone call because I can tell you everything I've done in my life. Everything. It'll make them all jealous. Hey, you can find us at OSP with MM, or Original Sports Podcast, everywhere you listen or watch podcasts. We're on every Tuesday night. In fact, we're on Roku at National Streaming Sports at 7 o'clock. Absolutely love what I do. We talk a lot of sports, and we're getting ready to launch a new show called Terrible Talk. It's all Pittsburgh Steelers talk because we've had about enough of what's going on with Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sorry.
What's wrong with that? All right, well, you know what? I'll take care of the final promo myself. Just so you know, the audio version of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button, people, on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for more subscribers. Enjoy the people we've had in the chat room. Can't thank y'all enough for being in here. Please also comment and like and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? Feel free to send topic ideas to Self-Word Tribune at gmail.com. If you want to advertise, give me a call at 954-304-4941. We are also live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Why am I talking slow? No problem. I do that every once in a while. Now available my book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. Pretty much what that means is that, thank you, Andy, for getting that up there. Old school media versus new school media, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, Google Books, and Kindle. Check out SidelineSports.com, one of our partners as well. We do have an audio version as well. So, Candy, with that said, we talked about euchre. So why don't you go ahead and come on the screen for just a moment, and you can give us some final insights.
Euchre was just iconic. I mean, if you listened to him, you loved him, and no matter what was going on in the game, he had a way of bringing you into that game and entertaining you, whether the Brewers were winning or whether they were losing. You enjoyed listening to all the stories. In fact, sometimes in our down years when we weren't doing as good, it was fun to listen to him call those games because he would tell the stories and he would entertain you. I don't know of another voice for Brewers radio, and it will be very hard to listen to anybody other than Bob Euchre. And it was hard to see them not get past the playoffs and do it for Bob, because if you saw how much he loved the team. I mean, he was 90 plus years and he's in that locker room, and I see the pictures of him celebrating when they did well. And the players wanted to do it for him, much less for themselves. He's going to be greatly missed. He was really iconic, and I mean, he was one of the only people that was allowed to park inside Miller Park, but he was allowed to park inside Miller Park. He'll be missed greatly. Like I said, I've listened to him call games let's face it, he was on the air for 54 years of the Brewers. You won't find another announcer that'll last, I don't think, long like that.
Well, 54 years is a long time, Candy. Reality is he did have a chance to call one World Series with Milwaukee back in 1982 when the Brewers took on the St. Louis Cardinals, only to lose in a 7-game classic amongst the Beer Town. So with that said, that does include this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. There will be no show next Monday night. We will be back in 2 weeks. Candy and I will be going to Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. So, folks, why I loaded this show up, so we gave you plenty to work with. And hard to believe, fellas, and now Candy, that spring training is just a matter of weeks away, where pitchers and catchers report, and we're still getting through the finale of football. So, on behalf of Candy Ebling, our producer, Eric Katz, Mark the Barber, and Trent Clark, my co-host, I want to thank you very much for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, and we will see you in 2 weeks, unless y'all want to go out there and provide a Super Bowl prediction. Okay, if you don't, show's over. Anybody?
Eagles.
Okay, we're done. Eagles. You tongue-tied, Mark?
No, I'm going with Pat Mahomes.
Okay.
That's my guy.
You know what? I'm not going to go ahead and make a prediction. I don't want to. I figure I'll let my experts do it. Candy, you want to make one? I don't want to. I love the look on Trent Clark Barber's face. Got to give him a nickname.
I'd like to see the Eagles. I think it will come down to how they handle anything that doesn't go their way, because Kansas City has been there. They've been proven but if there's any adversity, how does Philadelphia keep plowing on, or do they kind of melt? I think that Philadelphia's built for it. They're built tough, and I think Saquon, they can just run all over, and their defense is really tough. So I say Philadelphia.
So I'll throw a teaser out there. If you want to hear what I really think of the game, I encourage you to check out the Motor City Man Mouse show with myself and Don Beebe, and we go ahead and talk about it, and you'll know exactly where I am. Do I think the Chiefs can three-peat? Well, they have a good chance of doing it. Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley. He's certainly a sentimental favorite against a lot of people knowing he gave up the rushing record to do so. With that said, we are done. We look forward to seeing y'all in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody, and have a great night. Bye now.